Supplies. As a first step, make sure everything you need is present and at your disposal. It's much harder to look for everything while your hand is stuck in a mold than it is to take the extra 2 seconds to look for it before you start. Making of the severed hand. To start making the mold, we need to first have a container that will fit whichever body part we are molding. I fashioned this one myself out of an old juice pitcher and an oatmeal container. Once we have that and our supplies, we add the alginate first. We do this first because otherwise it'll float on the water, making it harder to stir. We now pour in the water, mixing them in a 1-to-1 part ratio. You can mix this with a professional mixer or your hand. I chose my hand, obviously. When we use this method, we have to make sure to move our hand around enough to get rid of all the clumps of alginate. Once everything is starting to set, you want to try to move your hand as little as possible and let the mold. Here, once the alginate left over on your hand and container dry and is very rubbery, you are nearby and ready for demold. For the demolding process, you want to be very careful not to tear the mold or to ruin the imprint. I applied Vaseline to my arm earlier. This is not only to help your hand slide out easier, it significantly reduces the amount of suction, which is the main factor in keeping your hand held in the mold. Cleaning up as we go is also very important. Casting the severed hand. Now that I have removed my hand from the mold, it is time to make the actual severed hand from the silicone. Again, it is very important that you have everything you need with you before starting. We'll start by mixing part A and part B of the silicone together in a 1-to-1 ratio. You want to make sure that we mix both parts A and B equally so that the mold will turn out as perfect as possible. Once we mixed everything together, the silicone only has about 6 to 8 minutes before it starts to set. Here I am adding a tiny bit of silicone paint. This will dye the mixed silicone into a flesh color. You can adjust this as needed. Next, I added some flocking. This is literally just colored fuzz that when added to the silicone helps with the color. I added flesh, some brown, and a tiny bit of red. This will help it more look like skin and give it more of a dimension, and the red will give the vein and capillary look. Next, I poured the mixture into the mold, after mixing everything together thoroughly again. I then took the mold and sloshed it. This is just rotating it to make sure everything inside gets covered, and then bang it lightly on the table to get all of the air bubbles to surface. As an added effect, I took red flocking and poked it into the stump of the hand. This will help give it an internal gory look. I waited a little too late and the silicone had already started to set. Despite that, it looked pretty good. Now, all that there is to do is to wait about 25 minutes until the hand is ready for demold. After that antagonizing 25 minutes, it is finally time for demolding. This, however, is one step that cannot be rushed. You want to be very careful to cut away anything that can be cut away without damaging the hand itself. Here you can see that I cut large chunks out of the alginate mold. If you really wanted to be careful enough, you could literally use this mold again and again and again, as long as you do it before it starts to dry up. Again, it is very important to be careful when removing the hand. We don't want any fingers getting ripped off. I know it's hard to see, but the detail is absolutely amazing. It literally gets down to every single fingerprint and mark. Adding makeup. Applying makeup is one step where amateurs go wrong. It is very easy to mess up the steps or apply the makeup too heavily. It is very important to be extremely careful when mixing everything together and measuring everything out. What I am doing here is simply covering up areas where it was very translucent with a little bit more skin-colored silicone. This includes mainly the fingers and other areas of the skin. Next, I am taking red and adding it to the areas of the hand where my actual skin is red. I also added blue to where my veins stuck out. This adds more dimension. I unfortunately didn't work fast enough, so I had to make up a second batch of the silicone paint and continue what I had previously worked on.